Pinky rings, yeah. I'm with you, Fred. I have no issue showing my face.
You guys can do the base.
Face in the.
I am what I am.
Okay, we are live.
Is it 7?
It is 7:59.
59, we got 1 minute.
Flags are ready to go. It is 7, sir.
All right, then I hereby call this committee of the whole for Milburn CC District School or CC School District 24 to order at 7 PM. Madam Secretary, can you call the roll, please?
John Lorenzen.
Here.
Brendan Murphy.
Here.
Peter Petrini.
Here.
Billy Info. Here. John Ruggles.
Here.
Ed Skepstrom.
Here.
And Lisa Lister. Here.
Rise we pray. Pledge
allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right. Madam Secretary, do we have any public comments?
We do not.
All right. All right, team, do we have an addition of information or discussion items? Anything we missed? Nope. All right, information discussion, science of reading, Illinois literacy plan and presentation.
Okay, so tonight we have our two coaches at the elementary school, our two instructional coaches at the elementary school presenting. Melissa and Sandy are going to present on the science of reading. And the reason why I think it's important to talk about is because this is something that is chattering about in the area of education, and it's important for the board to know in case you get questions about it. Is our school doing it? Do we believe in the science of reading? Questions like that, and how do you answer that? So at least have a little bit of knowledge. So we're going to give a very, very, very high level view of the science of reading, what it is not, and how it relates to the Illinois literacy plan, which is Peter mentioned, I think, in December, after going to the conference and hearing a session on the Illinois literacy plan and how that connects, and then how that connects to our current curriculum, which is ARC, or American Reading Company. So Melissa Lawrence and Sandy Stolzer are going to present on that, and they are our instructional coaches at the elementary school and are very deep in it and have been helping our teachers understand some of the same things about what it is not, because people can get into it a little bit and have a little knowledge and then maybe have some misunderstanding. So we're going to go from there. It'll take me just a second to get the presentation loaded. You guys can start talking.
Thanks for having us. We have done this PD with our teachers over the last couple of weeks. So we just thought we'd share with you what we're sharing with your teachers. It's a more condensed version of it, but we're doing some extra PD with our staff, teaching staff. So.
Getting everybody in the same language, hearing the same language, getting everybody level set, and then moving from there.
So we're going to start with the definition. Go to the next slide. So I'm going to read this to you. This definition comes from the Reading League, which is a very reputable organization on just reading research. And I just like this definition. So I'm going to go ahead and just read out loud and follow along. The science of reading is a vast interdisciplinary body of scientifically based research about reading and issues related to reading and writing. This research has been conducted over the last 5 decades across the world and is derived from thousands of studies conducted in multiple languages. The science of reading has culminated in a preponderance of evidence to inform how proficient reading and writing develop, why some have difficulty, and how we can most effectively assess and teach, and therefore improve student outcomes through prevention of and intervention for reading difficulties. It's long, but I also want to read another definition to you from NWEA, and we'll just compare the two. So this one comes from NWEA, and it says, the science of reading is the converging evidence of what matters and what works in literacy instruction. There's thousands upon thousands of research on reading instruction. But the science of reading, the definition really comes from when well-designed studies point to a similar result, you should pay attention. So it's that evidence that defines the science of reading. So what science, the science of reading research doesn't just come from education. It's also developed through cognitive psychology. So all these fields have helped to form the definition. Cognitive psychology, communication sciences, developmental psychology, education, special education, implementation science, linguistics, neuroscience, and school psychology. And sometimes it helps us to know what science of reading is or what something is when we identify what it's not. So on the next slide, you'll see these are some things that it is not. It is not, I'll tell you what some of the things, I don't have the slides with me, but I'll tell you which things I can remember.
What is
So,
it? Where is
it-
Thanks.
Oh, one more back, there we go.
All right.
It's not like a personal philosophy, or it's not an ideology, you know, it's not something high up in the clouds, you know, like a philosophy. It's not a fad or a trend or new idea or pendulum swing, which is what we're hearing a lot about. It's based on this body of evidence and research. It's not a political agenda, which it is becoming politicized, I would say, but it's not a political agenda. It's not a one-size-fits-all approach. It's not a program, a specific program of instruction, and it isn't, as you'll see in the next few slides, it's not just a single component of instruction such as phonics.
So let's take a look at the brain science behind the science of reading. And so, as Melissa has said, that it is from people of many different backgrounds across the world that have come up with this research. And so, one professor in France was talking and said that, you know, adults, we know more about how our cars work than we do about how the brain works. And so understanding as educators and parents, how our children's brains work is very important. So as we know that with infants, we know when we immerse them in language, they learn to speak and they learn their vocabulary. As they get a little older and we want them to learn to read, we do a lot of books. We read books with them, we immerse them in that, but that's not going to teach them to read. They need instruction in order for that. And so through some MRI scans and technology, we have seen how the brain reacts when children are learning to read. And there are 4 main areas in the left side of the brain. So if we go to the next slide, in this, we do have those 4 main areas, one of them being what they call the letter box. And that's where children are learning to identify those letters and those sounds. Then they're moving into decoding words, those simple words. And we call that orthographic mapping. And so what they're doing is they're developing pathways between these different parts of the brain. And so as children begin to learn to decode more and more and learning those multisyllabic words, they're able to move freely through those 4 different areas. When they memorize words, they're going to another part of the brain, and then that makes it difficult for them to retrieve that. So when we make those connections of the sounds and the letters together, that's what's helping them to be able to move more freely. And then on the next slide. And so then the science of reading is not a literacy method in and of itself. Rather, it's the existing body of knowledge about how we learn to read. And the part that I really like about these 2 sentences is the one where it talks about that nearly every child can learn to read with confidence, given explicit instruction in the components of reading. That's that most important part.
That leads us to the last phrase as components of reading. So there are 5 components of reading, and the science of reading addresses all of them, not just phonics, which is what we've been hearing a lot about. That's kind of the buzz right now, is to become more aware of our phonics instruction. But it includes phonemic awareness, which is the ability to isolate, identify, and manipulate sounds from spoken words. Phonics, which is the relationship between letters and sounds in written language, difference between phonemic awareness and phonics. And then fluency is the ability to read quickly and accurately. Vocabulary, which is the amount of words a reader is familiar with. And then comprehension, which is the ultimate goal, is to be able to make meaning and understand the text. So those are the 5 pillars of reading that are addressed in the science. Next slide. So I'm going to break this down. It's a little bit theoretical here, but there are 2. Whenever you talk about or hear about or listen to someone speak about the science of reading, they often address 2 theoretical frameworks to help us understand what's happening as people learn to read. One is, and this is what every reader needs, a proficient reader needs to have both of these components. They need to have word recognition and language comprehension. And if you notice, this is an equation and it's a multiplier. What that means is it's not a sum of, it's not like, hey, I got a little bit of word recognition and a little bit of language comprehension, so I'm gonna be okay. It means if I have language comprehension, which is like, I'm well adept in language comprehension, but I'm not a very good decoder. In the past, I would have even said to myself, well, you know, they'll use their contextual skills and they'll figure it out, but that's not true. They will not become a proficient reader, so we need to address both of those issues. So if you go to the next slide, this is another theoretical framework that kind of breaks that down to show us that in word recognition, the components that every reader needs is they need those word recognition components, they need those language comprehension components, and they need to be integrated to become proficient readers. So that's that kind of in a nutshell. It's called the Scarborough's reading room.
All right, so as you know, last month that the Illinois Board of Education has adopted the Illinois Comprehensive Literacy Plan. And so if we go to the next slide. So this plan serves as a roadmap designed to guide and unify literacy efforts across the state. Its purpose is to identify the supports and resources necessary to ensure that every student receives developmentally appropriate evidence-based literacy instruction. So then if we go to the next slide and we talk about what is that evidence-based instruction, that is where we have instructional practices including materials and methods that have been tested and found to be effective for a large group of diverse students. And so even those pathways with helping, like if the child is encountering some difficulty with learning to read, it provides some pathways for teachers to understand and help that student be successful.
So in the Illinois plan, the comprehensive literacy plan, they're addressing 7 components. You'll notice that the 5 in the center are those 5 pillars that I had talked about. But they're also adding, because it's literacy, they're adding oracy and writing. And you notice those are like the bookends for the 7 components, because oracy and writing need to be integrated into reading instruction. So that all of these are addressed in the comprehensive 200+ page plan from ISB. Also, the plan is really addressing, just letting you guys know, there's 3 major goals from ISB's comprehensive literacy plan. First goal is that every student receives high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. That's a key thing that gets repeated is evidence-based. Second goal is that every educator is prepared and continuously supported to deliver high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. And then we're going to prepare our leaders to equip and maintain and sustain the conditions for high quality evidence-based literacy instruction. So it just gets repeated. And they have a plan over the next couple of years, how they will push this out in the process that this will happen in the next few years. I'm starting with the students and then to the educator and then to the leaders. And then we have good news to share. So Art Core is a high quality curriculum that addresses the science of reading. And we have invested in this program for our elementary building. And they are doing they're doing their due diligence to be aligned with Illinois' ISB comprehensive literacy plan. So that's good news for us. That's it for us.
Any questions?
Any questions from the board?
Question, so is the literacy component only focusing on language art, like the written, or, so when I think literacy, like in math, I think of the ability to interpret graphs and stuff. Is that included in this, or is this just focusing more on?
I would
written
say
words?
those 7 components, which start with
Oracy.
oracy and writing, and then they go into comprehension can be in the content areas. So I mean, you can bring comprehension into math, but there's nowhere that I read in the plan where it's addressing different discipline literacies like reading and math. So I haven't seen that.
It's always the science and social studies.
Is the focus on the elementary school with this then?
That is where we are.
That
So
is our
that's-
reading program.
Yes.
Okay, so
This is, yeah.
we assume that by the time they get to middle school, now they're reading to learn as opposed to learning to read.
So that is, I mean, that's a good thing to way to think about it. I think that there are probably some things that we're learning about the science of reading that we can carry over into the middle school. So that probably things that they're already doing, but there's probably some things we can think about and how that
This is mostly K through 12.
right now, we're just focusing on K-5.
And that learning to read even starts with our core at the very beginning because of the heavy science and social studies that we are doing in the grade level text and above, where children are growing in the knowledge of a specific area. So that whole learning to read, waiting for that aspect of when they know how to read, we are immersing them from the beginning to that. Right, thank you.
Thank you very much.
I appreciate that. Nicely done.
Yes.
Getting all that in 10 minutes.
Yeah.
That was very well thought out. Thank you.
Holiday waiver process.
Okay, so in the future. At the next meeting, we're going to have a hearing that's what we have to have in order to make our calendar that we passed last month legal for next year. So in that calendar, we have to do this every year. It's just a matter of which holidays we have to do. So there's certain holidays that are still written into the state school code that you have to have a waiver for if you're gonna have school attendance on those days. Some of those holidays are not waivable. For example, election day next year is not waivable. That there's some that they say, no, you can't waive, some you can waive, some you can waive, but if you have school on that day, then you have to present lessons on that particular topic, like Casimir Pulaski Day and Veterans Day, for example. That we do. So that's next month. Our next meeting.
Next meeting.
Yep.
All right. Registration fees, activity fees.
Okay, so we've had a lot of discussion on it. I sent out a little bit more information last week, just the comparables. There's such a huge range of fees and what people charge for different things, and it's hard to compare apples to apples. But I would say that Milburn is not out of the norm as far as any of our fees are concerned. We might compare a little bit higher in our activity fees with some of our surrounding districts, and we might be lower than some of our districts in our general fees. So it's just a matter of where we want to generate that revenue to pay for the costs that it takes to educate students and provide them with great activities and a great place to learn. In general, the wealthier school districts tend to charge higher fees, which is interesting because some districts with incredibly high fund balances are charging the highest fees, like Stevenson. Because they can. So that's always fascinating to me. Other districts in our area don't charge fees because they can't collect the fees anyway, so it doesn't pay. For anyone that would have a hardship, there's if anybody qualifies for free or reduced lunch, fees are automatically waived unless it's like a yearbook or something extra like that we would charge. All activity fees are waived. If there's somebody who's going through a temporary hardship, we've had that, then there's a process they can appeal to me. There's a form they fill out and then we approve it. I deem it's a worthy. Saving money to go to Hawaii for a family vacation is not a good reason, but that's not, people are not asking me for that. So it's up to the board to determine what your thoughts are for where we want to go.
Where do we leave it off last? We were just kind of discussing it.
Just discussing. So we want to approve until the next meeting.
I know I brought it up quite a number of times myself, and I've actually been pretty proactive in asking people about it. I've probably just 25 or 35 people about it, and I gotta tell you, the answers I get have ranged from, I can't believe we're charging this much, to I don't care what we charge. I mean, it's across the board crazy everywhere. And I don't even think it's like, people in the Well, I don't know if we have wealthier areas, but I don't even think. There's no pattern that I can see. It's just. Did we do a thought exchange on this or no?
No,
Okay. Is that something we should think about, or is that like a big can of worms?
I think it's a can of worms.
Yeah,
so,
that's
yeah.
kind of what I was thinking. I can tell you what 90% are gonna say, I Right. don't wanna pay anymore.
Right.
Those that take the time to answer, it, but I mean, I've had. Some people say, I don't even remember what the fees were, I don't really care.
I started looking at some of the activity fees today because I saw this was on the agenda and just to give a couple examples and I also offer if anyone has any specific questions about any of the fees and they want to see the breakout of where the money's going and why they are what they are. But so I pulled a few of the sports, cross country, our revenue was just over 7,800, but just the stipends alone was over 9,500. So and a lot of these were not even breaking even, which is why we have the fees that we have.
For the activities.
Yep.
Did we come to any resolution on like multiple children, families, when we talking about that at one point? Like
Fee cap
yeah, something like that, didn't we bring that up?
possibility.
it's been, we've studied that every year and landed on no. So far, that can always change, but it doesn't. The last time we did a really in-depth study and I went family by family into that. There were 2 families that were impacted pretty heavily, 3 actually. It was, the Lynns and the Murphys. And one other family. That it would have had any
Okay.
significant impact on, because we just happen to have a couple of kids who were in everything. All the bands, all the dramas, all the choirs,
Yeah.
all the cross country, every activity, so we were paying for a couple of years there heavily. And it didn't feel right for, to say, oh yeah, let's do a family cap now. That wouldn't be good, so. It doesn't really impact as many people as we think it would. Every once in a while, we'll get a family that has, 4 kids in 5th through 8th grade. Twins, a couple sets of twins or something that really impacts them. But other than that, I don't know that it impacts that many people significantly.
I mean, I do think they're a little high, but I also think like. As long as we're giving like students with hardships, help. I'm fine with what they are.
And even temporary hardships.
Right,
I
as
mean,
long as
that's
we're
kind of nice.
helping,
It's
as long
not-
as kids aren't being excluded because they
Right.
can't afford it,
Right.
that's where I'm at.
I would be more inclined to reduce registration fees instead of activities, just maybe it's more of a choice, but if we want to. We're looking at lowering the taxes from bond dropping off. But I do want us to be in a good place and I don't want it to, be an issue down the road or we need to run a referendum or counting our chickens before they hatch, hoping all the new developments pay for it. So.
I don't even know where we go from here. I mean, it's something I brought up and I don't have a specific proposal because it seems like depending on the month or who I talk to, I'm getting different feedback, so. I don't know if my opinions change or it hasn't formed it. I have no idea. That's because it was, the first 5 or 6 people I, bumped into, it's like, what are we doing? And then you always have that question, what are my registration fees paying for? And we don't really have a solid answer for that, other than goes into the general fund.
Carly has a solid answer.
Mm.
We have solid
Yeah,
answers.
we. Specifically, like some of it goes to tech fees, technology specifically. This is the worst time to put a mint in my mouth.
Yeah.
But I don't have an answer of every little thing, but I can definitely pull it and I can pull all the activity numbers too. And we can run projections on what it looks like if we don't bring these revenues in. And what that will look for the bottom line over the course of years. So I'll work on pulling all that information for you.
Yeah, we can definitely do that. For sports fees, that's already done. I mean, that's pretty,
Right.
it's supplies and.
Yeah, and I get that
uniforms and-
too. It's, you know, you get some people saying, oh, well, and I don't have an answer for that too, but some sports just quite honestly support other sports.
Mhm.
You know, pay $150 to run across country and we don't even have officials to pay. You know what I mean? Or you don't know what I mean?
No, say that again. What do you mean by support?
Cross country is a no cut thing. It's
Yeah.
$150 for our kids to run in the field
Right, and we're still losing money.
on cross country.
Yes,
That was the example I just gave. So our revenue was just over 7,800, but just for the stipends, because they're coaches, was over 95, but that doesn't include the transportation. So when we're driving students home, after practice, the activity buses, which there's no charge for that. The supplies, which for cross country, there probably are not a lot, but if you think of a different sport, there's, I'm sure, printing and all these little things that you might never think about. Tournament fees, going to different, events.
Yeah, I just think with the other events, when you pay officials and all the
Yeah.
other stuff, it would cost more.
basketball's
With
very
with a
expensive.
basketball, you're paying 2 or 3 referees, and well, 2, well, maybe sometimes.
Right. Plus
We
more
don't
traffic.
have that. The uniforms for cross country are specific, so I mean, you get those back at the end of the year, so it's surprising to me, but the numbers I don't know.
Yeah, we can look at all of the activities and almost all of them run a deficit. The only ones that probably don't are something like crochet club or ecology club, where there really are not a lot of high dollar supplies, and the stipend for that isn't as high as a coach necessarily. So there's, a definite benefit to keeping.
I'm not even saying it's a bad
fees.
thing. Sometimes
Yeah.
some sports do support other sports, sometimes. That happens. That will happen all the way through the college ranks.
So I guess getting back to the original question, I think, from all this, we were trying to decide if we were gonna just maintain. I think it was $200 for registration fee, I can't remember that to be paid. Or I know, thank you, or I know there was a graph that Carly showed a couple weeks past where like if we increased it by $5 or $10, like what that revenue would look like, I think like 2-3 years ago. That's kind of what we're trying to decide here.
Yep.
So I guess I'll just put my thing, I'm fine with the activity fees and where they're at. If anything, based on the data that I know, Dr. Lynn and Carly have collected, I would be okay if we raised it by 5, because I know that it's going somewhere for our teachers and for the students. But I don't think there need to be any less registration wise. Activity fees, again, that's optional, so I don't, it's there, it's optional. But registration fee, like, I mean, Carly could probably lay out line by line where each of that money is going. And that goes back to the kids, which is the mission of the board, so. I'm fine with keeping it.
Do we charge parents to watch their kid play sport? No.
Good, but
No, I don't, I hate that. I think
Yeah,
it's
that's-
wrong,
that's-
but so many schools do it. I didn't know if we did. My kids aren't old enough.
There's a number of schools for basketball who charge an entry fee to get in, but then they also have a concession stand where they make some pretty good money at too. But we don't do either. Probably largely because we couldn't get the help to do it. We don't have the volunteer, we don't have people lining up to volunteer for that kind of stuff. Unfortunately.
If you could waive your activity fee to do it. Hey.
Senate, I like that.
We've tried a couple
It's
times.
actually not a bad idea.
Yeah, we've tried a couple times to get concessions there.
like food trucks or something.
No,
Well,
well,
that'd be-
that
Well,
would be
for
a
like
good
cross
idea.
country, because cross country's outside.
But yeah,
That would be a good opportunity for somebody.
Yeah. I mean, even at basketball games, some of them just have card tables and they got candy on them. And, they get a box of money by the end
Oh, yeah.
of the time, but some of them also do charge like $1 or $2 to get in. just to watch.
Yeah, that's what I was curious.
Overall, I don't think we're wasting money on anything, like, we're not, we're not, we don't have snacks here for us at the board meetings. The most expensive thing like is our I conference that we spend money on for ourselves. And that's a professional development thing. Yeah, cause I don't wanna be like, oh, we're taking money away from program X to, you know, have our own lobster dinner, but not doing it. Yeah, I'd be fine with keeping them as is for now, or possibly raising the activities $5. To just offset that deficit.
Well, we just went from cutting our fees to raising.
That's.
What just happened?
The way it works, gotta stop talking about money.
But like, like of the other districts that Dr. Lynn has showed us, right, like we are very, like relatively low compared to the neighboring areas, so.
Yeah.
Not like.
Not neighboring,
100%, but
compared
like,
compared to
okay, I mean,
Libertyville and Stevenson, of course we.
Well, or for Antioch, for example.
yeah.
Their,
it's 5.
registration fees were $100 more.
Yeah.
Middle school,
Yeah.
Middle school.
Their middle school prices were a lot bigger than. ours.
300
I
and
looked at
something
that.
for middle,
Yeah.
for eighth grade. And we don't, we just
And, yeah.
keep them all the same.
Yeah.
I mean, it's all how you wanna collect your money.
We do then like charge extra for things like a Springfield trip, right? Or
Yes,
Mhm.
those are paid for directly by parents and Epic helps out with that too, so fundraising helps offset that for parents. For Timberley and for Springfield is supported by Epic. The board supports kids who are on free and reduced lunch, who qualify for free and reduced lunch, we pay for them as a district. We pay the teacher stipends to go. So the board still supports that as well. And provides part of it, but parents pay the bulk.
I'm for keeping them the same. I don't have any issue with that. I think they're reasonable. And if we're just looking at like robbing Peter to pay Paul, it doesn't really matter.
Mhm.
You know, like, oh, let's lower this and then increase that, just keep it where it is.
Yeah.
I think people can handle it. There's ways around it for those who can't. And even for those who can't temporarily, there's ways around them. I think it's pretty reasonable.
Mhm.
Or like John said, increase them by the $5-10.
That John, that John, for the record, that John.
That's good.
And I certainly don't want to lose the revenue, that's for sure, so we have to find it somewhere else.
The good news is we can change it next year. If we deem it.
Well, it's not like this is a massive money maker, like you said, most of these are losing money. So I think it's hard to argue reducing them. It's not so.
Alright, so we're good.
Mhm.
Property tax relief grant program resolution.
Okay, at our next meeting, we have to pass the property tax relief grant resolution. We did not receive the property tax relief grant again this year, not again. We have it, it's a 2-year program, so we have to do it for 2 years in a row. If we would have qualified this year, we were just outside again. Oh, so then we would have done a double this year and another one next year, moving forward, so. That would have been really good for our district, revenue wise.
How do we
And
get
good
just
for-
inside?
Just that, just at a time, you have to, the other districts have to be given more money. So as other districts are awarded this grant, the list changes. So for example, we started out at over 100 when they first started. And we kept moving up each year because the people ahead of us were getting the grant and coming down in their formula. Lake's got it twice in a row. So yeah, that tells you our area, but it's also, I'm a little bit salty because it's the formula is skewed to high school districts. So more high school districts qualified easier because of the way that they tax higher. It's fine, because I live in the Lakes District and the Grays Lake District is part of us too, and they got it, so it helps our taxpayers lower our taxes. especially when Milburn's was ramping up with our bonds at the end there. It helped our taxpayers in general. It would have been a lot worse.
So is I know you probably don't know the whole algorithm or whatever, but is it based off of like deficit or percentage of property taxes?
It's based on EAV per pupil. There's a whole, it's on the state website if you want to go and
Check it out, yeah.
yeah. It's pretty exciting.
All right.
It is.
Does attendance have anything to do with that?
No, this is just purely property tax. Load. In your district, so they calculate. Tons of things, and I don't remember what all is calculated in, but it's pretty complex formula. What's not complex is the difference between elementary and high school. It's just a straight flat percentage, and because high schools have a different taxing rate, so elementaries are capped at 3.5 or whatever the formula is in the ed fund. High schools had a 4 point something cap. They only have the kids for 4 years. We have the kids for 9 years. It's not fair, but it's okay. So they tax at a higher, high schools tax at a higher rate because it's more, high schools are more expensive to run. That's just the facts of the matter, so. They just come out a little bit better, but I think we were in 50, so the district says a set, or the state sets a dollar amount, $50 million a year is allocated just for this grant. And you can look at the lists and they calculate out who's eligible for how much. And you get down to 50 million, and if everybody above that applies, that's it. We were in the 58-ish million this year, just outside. That's what you get at those. Yeah, but we could move down too. Because of our property tax relief and because our bonds are coming off this year, so. Might have been our last shot, but. That just means other districts are. They need it worse than us. But we were the highest in like county, us and Zion, highest on the list.
Did you tell them how higher our KG fees were?
It's not calculated in there. For some
And
reason.
they're going up.
$5.
Is that come through ISB or like the state legislature?
Well, the legislature approved the property tax relief grant. But I think ISB did the calculation. Okay. So it's on the ISB website. If you look at PTRG and just type it into the search box, it'll come up with. And then it'll have forms and the applications and there's a Excel document that you can click on, and it's got all the rankings and the formula. Adequacy is, I don't know how it's.
We still won't.
Yep, we didn't get it. It's okay. All right, somebody asked, I can't remember who was it, you? John somebody asked me about the possibility of a late start.
That's me.
Fred, John.
So,
Wasn't me.
That was me.
Oh, you, John.
Yes, this was our meeting, so.
Okay. So, I thought I'd just give a little background on having a late start for inclement weather. So. Couple Tuesdays ago, when we had the surprise ice storm overnight. There would have been an opportunity if we would have had a 2 hours late start to call a 2 hours late start. By 9 o'clock, it was the roads were very nice. 5:30, not so good, but 9 o'clock. They were fine. So if we would have had the possibility of calling a late start that day, we could have still had school and gone on and make it count. And some of the high schools in our area did that. I think maybe 1 or 2 of the elementary schools, Grass Lake and Emmons, did too. They share transportation, so they kind of have to do it together. It won't work for them. So John asked me, other people have asked me, why don't we do it? I'm not opposed to a late start. My only hesitation for doing it is it would be a pain in the butt. because we don't do it often enough. So having people, having kids and parents all understand what 2 hours late and calculating their bus stops and having that run and then coordinating it with the other 20 some school districts that drop off kids in our school. I just don't, I think it would be more of a problem than it's worth, only because we do it once every 5 years would it work out. Before this year, we hadn't called a snow day since January of 2019. So it's been a while since we've had any snow days called. And so snow days, I mean, just call, my opinion is that we'll just call snow days. It's,
We were at home when.
yeah, I know, that made it nice.
Now, a question that I had about, the email that went out that said, then we wouldn't need to use an emergency day. So I'm a little confused about these emergency days, because that's what's happening when we're calling a snow day, but then we still have to make it up. But then how do we only have a limited number of those emergencies? Do you understand where?
I think so.
Okay.
Yes, it's very confusing. And it's even more confusing now we add e-learning into it, which I learned something on Friday, this last Friday at our superintendent's meeting about how e-learning days count in this emergency day situation. So in our calendar, in the state calendar, when we approve it, we go in and sign up for the state calendar. There's 180 days. Yes, 180 days in our calendar that are counted where we have teacher attendance have 180 days. Student attendance is 176 days. In addition to that, we have to put in 5 emergency days. So those would be, because we ended on May 29th, I think it was this year, was our original plan. And then the next week would have been Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, Friday, 5 emergency days. So if you call off school in those January, then you have to make it up in one of those emergency days. If you go beyond it, let's say we had to call 10 days off of school and we had the worst winter ever, you only have to make up 5. So once you get past those 5, that's only if you call school off completely. If it's an e-learning day, it counts and you can still use 5 emergency days.
So if I'm hearing you right, what you're saying is a late start is gonna be so rare that we probably shouldn't waste the time and resources to make a protocol for it and educate everybody on that protocol.
That's my opinion in a nutshell. I could be convinced otherwise.
No, I think they're probably rare too, where, oh, you can't get through for 2 hours and then all of a sudden you can. I remember that day too, it was, we were sliding down our driveway
I know.
in the morning. But yeah, by 9, that gets to be, what, you're out of school? What? But I honestly can't remember another day like that. In a very long time.
Yeah, I can't.
I think those would make sense if you did once a month late starts for like PD for the teachers. Teachers come in normal time, you hit them with PD for 2 hours. You have the students come in, then it's like always happening.
Right.
But just to put in, I'm against it. And that's how I feel about it.
I've changed my opinion, because first thing I said was, I can't believe we don't have protocol for that.
That's why we're talking about it.
We'll do it.
But how hard is it to put in a protocol for that? But I get the education piece of it. I mean, to make the protocol should be hard.
And let them have a snow day.
Yeah.
Have a snow day.
So
It was so
I've
nice.
changed, you convinced me, I've changed my mind. It is kind of where I guess we would start to also.
I think it would mess up a lot of people too.
Yeah, it's different for a high school level where they're self-reliant versus kindergartners. Can't.
It would help some people too. I would acknowledge. So if I'm going to work and I gotta go to work, I may be able to go in late
Mhm.
versus take the whole day off. So I get that part too. I just hope if it becomes a more of a common thing, I would see it. Where I grew up, we had late starts. We had a 1 hour late start, a 2 hour late start, and then they would cancel school. But it was happening once every couple of weeks.
But you grew up in Ann Arbor.
You're right.
Yeah, I've come around to that. You're probably not needed.
That's just my opinion. I can change that to
What do you think, John?
You know what? I grew up in Virginia and we'd have a late start schedule and you know, the buses would come at 9 o'clock. So when I saw the email that went out and said, if we had a late start, we could have had it. I'm like, well, why don't we?
That's what I thought at first.
So I wanted to have the discussion and see what everyone thought.
Yep.
That's why it's on the agenda.
We consider it every once in a while.
Yeah.
Every time it comes up, every 3, 4 years, 5 years. Why do we have late start?
Okay. Future agenda.
Are we all thinking that we don't need this?
Yeah.
Okay. All right.
All right. Future agenda items.
Okay, we got holiday waivers, talked about already, and fee approvals. Among other things on your desk at your place, you've got the closed session minutes, so review those. Those are confidential. Just bring back the package. If you have any questions about them, of course, you can contact me in the middle. Between here and there, bring them back so we can shred them. That's it.
Superintendent report, is that it?
That's it.
All right, business office report.
I don't have much. I think since the last meeting, we've been wrapping up payroll and grant reporting, year-end, calendar year-end. Brandy Baird and I attended the IASPA conference, so this is the HR school personnel conference. It's held once a year. They go over hot topics that are HR related. So that was a couple weeks ago. It was really good. It was they have various breakout sessions on all things HR. And I think, oh, and our newest bus driver started driving a bus, I think, last week. So that's a huge win. Jessica.
Does that mean we have?
Awesome.
No, it would be great if we had one more.
One more?
So if anyone knows, one more bus driver out there. Or non-bus driver that we can train. This person was trained actually, no experience, so, but she's fabulous and passed all the tests. She's great with kids, so we're really lucky. Yep, and that is it.
All right. Board reports. Want to do anything?
I
Paul?
attended a couple wrestling meets, which were quite fun, very exciting. And then it's nice to see that we actually have a lot of girls compared to other schools. And very good girls, like, so one of them really hammered this other kid. This was, I mean, it was bad. And he went off crying and I was like, oh man, you know, I mean, at least she's very skilled. And then I was talking to her mom, and I guess she's a stud. The school just like wins everything. I was pretty proud that she's parting over, and I thought that was a cool thing. And the band concert was wonderful. I mean, that was packed. That was my first time going. It was my son's first time in it, so I was really impressed, and just good kids. I'm happy about both of those things.
Had the first webinar with the IASB Legislative Advisory Advocacy Panel. They just talked about some of the different avenues we have to fight for what we have, what we want. You know, like witness slips or just calling politicians. It was mostly informative, no big actions going on. And then just something to keep on the radar. If you don't already know, 127, so Grays Lake, we have like 2 subdivisions that feed into Grays Lake North. They're looking at running an $80 million referendum. So that'll put up for a $300,000 house, they'll raise taxes like $500 a year, so. So some of our, they're gonna go down 500 from us,
Mhm.
but with the bond, then probably gonna go up.
It sound like an email or a text on that. Like a
Um,
survey, I remember getting something.
yeah,
Yeah,
yeah, and like you can take they have like a,
yeah, he'll be,
yeah, if you go
yeah,
on the website, it's like. on the top.
yeah, uh-huh, yeah.
Do they have high taxes to begin with, or are they lower than them?
They're
And
pretty
then like,
equal.
Are they pretty equal?
Well, I went to the choir concert a couple weeks ago. So that was a fun time. Good to see the little choirs and the director had a fun little event with the kids, so it was nice. All right. We do have closed session to collective negotiating matters between the public body and its employees or the representatives or deliberations recurrent concerning salary schedules for one or more classes of employees, 5 ILCS 120-2C2. So I'm gonna need a message. Motion.
Go to closed session for that reason.
There we go. All right. A motion has been made and seconded to go to closed session for,
Hey, guys.
read it again. All right, for option number 2, exception number 2,
As
number 2,
as we-
as read. Call roll.
Is this a roll call?
Yeah, this is a roll call.
All right,
We still got somebody.
We got a roll call to go in,
we
right?
got a roll call today.
Did we do that?
No.
I have not done that.
Okay.
And then
John
I'll-
Wilson,
Yes.
Brendan Murphy,
Yes.
Peter Petrini,
Yes.
Jillian Phelps,
Yes.
Karen Reynolds,
Yes, I anticipated my name.
Fred
I'm always
Sisdall,
interested.
Yes.
and Lisa Booster. Yeah.
Okay, I'm gonna end.